Hi class, today's problem is from chapter 13. I'm looking at a problem here on page 265. This is problem number 8. This one is dealing with taxes and cost curves for some hypothetical firm that's producing burgers, right? What could be more fun than that? Taxes and cost curves. All right, so once again, hit pause, give this problem a try, and then start it up and make sure that what you're doing looks a little bit like what I'm doing here. Okay. So let's get to it. Question says that the city government is considering two different tax proposals. On the one hand, they're thinking about a lump sum tax of $300 that they're going to impose on burger making companies. And then on the other hand, instead of doing that tax all at once, it might be a per unit tax where it would be $1 per burger that's imposed on the sellers of these burgers. Right? So the question then is asking us, how would each of these different types of taxes affect the various cost curves that we've been learning about all throughout chapter 13? Okay, let's start with the lump sum tax. $300 up front, where the firm's going to pay that same amount of tax, irrespective of how many burgers they're producing. Okay, the key thing for understanding these types of taxes is to sort of designate the tax as something that sounds more like a fixed cost or something that sounds more like a variable cost. Remember, those fixed costs are going to be things that you pay once, and then once you're done with that, it doesn't rise as you produce more stuff. So think rent or insurance or things like that. Variable costs, on the other hand, are those costs where every time you make more stuff, more burgers or whatever it is, you got to pay more for it. So think labor costs or materials or things like that. Okay. So with this lump sum tax, you should be asking the question, does this sound more like a fixed thing or more like a variable thing? Well, lump sum tax, that sounds much more like a fixed type of a cost to me than a variable one. And so then this lump sum tax should only affect those curves that incorporate in fixed costs. So I've gone ahead here and started us off by drawing the 4 different curves that we're asked to evaluate. Let's start here with the average fixed cost curve. We want to know what's going to happen to this curve when we put in place a $300 lump sum tax. Well, of course, that just means that on top of all the other fixed costs that the firm has, they also now have to pay this $300. And so regardless of how many burgers they're producing, their average fixed cost is going to be that much higher. So the average fixed cost, it should be shifting up vertically, just like so. Right? So AFC number 2 is including the $300 tax. AFC number 1 is what we started with, where it didn't include the tax. All right. Let's go up here to the top right. We can draw a contrast here. So this top right graph is looking at the average variable cost. Okay, so again, variable costs, think wages, think materials, things like that. This, in fact, is going to be a cost that does not go up when you get a lump sum tax like this. Right? ABC1 before the tax should be exactly equal to ABC2 after the tax, right? Because that extra $300 that they pay wouldn't be thought of it as a variable cost in any way. Instead, it's a constant thing. It's a fixed thing. So leave that one as is. Okay, how about the marginal cost curve? This one down here in the bottom right. So again, for all of these, you want to ask yourself the question, what's this cost curve really measure? In the case of marginal costs, it's measuring then how much more it costs this company to make one more unit. You make one more burger, how much more does it cost the company in total? The change in total cost associated with a 1 unit increase. Well, once again, this one should not shift. MC1 should equal MC2. Doesn't cost this company any more at the margin to make one more burger if they're paying that $300 lump sum tax up front. Okay. Last one that we've got here is the average total cost curve. This average total cost curve takes all the costs that the company has and divides it by the number of burgers here that they're going to be producing. Okay, so we're including all the costs because it's a total cost type of a measure. We want to include in that the $300 lump sum tax. So you guessed it, the average total cost curve should shift up in response to that lump sum $300 tax. Just like so. ATC. If you want, you can draw a little arrow to show the direction of the shift. Okay. So I'm hoping you're still with me. That's half of the problem. What we've done on these 4 graphs then is to show the impact of the $300 lump sum tax. Hang tight, I'm going to erase those shifts that we did. And then we'll take on problem B. There we go. Once again here in problem B, we're going to see a new tax that's put in place on these burger firms, I guess restaurants you might call them. But the nature of the tax is going to be different. All right. Now in scenario B, instead of having a $300 upfront tax, they're taxed $1 for every single burger that they produce. So they produce more, their total tax liability goes up. Right? You guessed it, that sounds much more like a variable type of cost. So those are the sort of curves that we want to be shifting. All right. Again, let's start with average fixed down here at the bottom. Right? If the average fixed cost curve is incorporating those things, only those costs that don't change as output changes, that's informing us that a per unit tax is going to have no effect on this particular cost curve. So the average fixed cost curve should stay the same when we put in place a per unit tax. Okay. What about the marginal cost curve? Let's look at this one down here in the bottom right quadrant. Again, that's measuring the extra cost to make one more burger. You guessed it, those costs are going up higher. So for any possible quantity that you're considering, the marginal cost of production should be higher because now this company has to deal with the tax on top of those costs that they had before. So MC2 is the marginal cost curve that includes that per unit tax. Average variable cost curve, that one's going up as well. Shift it up because now, regardless of the number of units that are being produced, the total amount of variable costs that they pay, and relatedly the average variable cost, is going to be just that much higher. Our last one, and this curve I guess is a little different than all the others here, is the average total cost. This one's different because this one gets shifted up in both type of tax. ATC, of course it does. Anytime you're increasing the costs for some business, regardless of the nature of how you're doing it, it's going to push up their total cost. So there you have it, guys. 2 different ways to incorporate a tax on the various cost curves that a firm has.